Most people assume they stop growing because of their age. 17, 18, 19. At some point, they just hear the same sentence repeated everywhere. You're done growing, and they accept it. But here's the strange part. A lot of people who believe they're done growing never actually check the one thing that determines it, their growth plates. Because the truth is, age alone doesn't decide whether growth is possible. Biology does. And those two are not always perfectly synchronized. Some people finish skeletal growth early, others finish years later, which means there are people walking around right now assuming their height is locked, when their body might still be capable of growth. But there's also the opposite situation. People who believe they can still grow, even though the structural window already closed. And that's where a lot of confusion begins. Because the real question is not whether you want to grow. The real question is whether your body is still structurally capable of it. So in this video, we're going to break down something very specific: how to tell if your growth plates might still be open. Not guesses, not internet myths, but the biological signs that actually matter. Because once you understand those signs, the entire height conversation changes. First, we need to understand what growth plates actually are. Growth plates are layers of cartilage located at the ends of long bones. During childhood and adolescence, these plates are responsible for bone lengthening. Inside them are cells that divide, multiply, and gradually turn cartilage into bone. Every time this process happens, the bone becomes slightly longer. Over years, those small changes accumulate. That's how height increases. But this system doesn't run forever. During puberty, hormonal changes begin transforming those cartilage layers into solid bone. This process is called epiphyseal fusion. When that fusion completes, the bone can no longer lengthen. And at that point, height growth stops. This is why growth plates matter more than age, because they determine whether the structural opportunity for bone length still exists. Now here's where things get interesting. Growth plates do not all close at the same time. Some close earlier, some later. And the exact timing varies significantly between individuals, which means two people who are both 18 years old can be in completely different biological stages. One may be fully fused. The other may still have partially active growth plates. That variation is one of the biggest reasons the internet gets so confused about height growth. People compare experiences without realizing they're in completely different stages. So let's talk about the signs that can suggest your growth plates might still be open. The first indicator is something called bone age. Bone age measures skeletal maturity rather than chronological age. Two people can both be 18 years old chronologically, but their bones may resemble those of a 16-year-old or a 20-year-old. Doctors determine bone age using X-rays, usually of the hand and wrist. By comparing bone development patterns to standardized charts, they can estimate skeletal maturity. If bone age is lower than chronological age, growth potential may still exist. If bone age matches or exceeds adult maturity, growth plates are likely closed. This is one of the most reliable ways to assess growth stage, but it's not the only clue. Another indicator is growth velocity. If someone is still gaining measurable height over time, that suggests growth plates are still active. Even small increases matter. Growth does not always happen in large jumps. Sometimes it occurs slowly over months. However, if height has been completely stable for several years, that often indicates skeletal maturity. Still, this alone is not definitive, because posture changes, spinal compression, and measurement differences can sometimes mask subtle changes, which is why we look at patterns rather than single measurements. Now let's talk about puberty timing. Late puberty often correlates with later skeletal maturity. If someone started puberty later than average, their growth plates may remain open longer. This is why late bloomers sometimes continue growing while their peers have already finished. But puberty itself is not a single moment. It's a long biological transition. Hormonal shifts during this period gradually push growth plates toward closure. And one hormone plays a particularly important role in that process: estrogen, even in males. Estrogen signaling is one of the primary drivers of growth plate fusion. As estrogen levels rise during puberty, cartilage in the growth plates begins transitioning into bone. Eventually, those plates fully fuse. Once that happens, the structural window for height growth closes. Understanding This process helps explain why timing matters so much. It's not just about whether growth hormone or IGF-1 is present, it's about whether the tissue those signals act on still exists. Now here's another factor people rarely consider. Skeletal maturity doesn't happen everywhere at the same time. Different bones close at different stages. For example, growth plates in the legs tend to close earlier than those in the clavicle, which means skeletal development is a gradual process rather than a single switch. But even with this variation, once major long bone plates fuse, meaningful height growth is no longer possible. Now let's address something that causes a lot of misunderstanding. Spinal height changes. Many people notice that they are taller in the morning than at night. That's not growth, that's spinal decompression. Throughout the day, gravity compresses the discs between vertebrae. During sleep, those discs rehydrate and expand again. This daily cycle can change measurable height by 1 to 2 centimeters, which sometimes leads people to believe they're still growing when they're actually observing hydration changes. Understanding that difference prevents false conclusions, because real growth involves bone lengthening, not temporary spinal expansion. Now here's the key takeaway. Determining whether growth plates are open is not about guessing. It's about evidence. Bone age scans, growth patterns, pubertal timing, medical imaging, those are the tools that actually answer the question. Without them, people often rely on assumptions, and assumptions lead to frustration. Because when someone believes growth is still possible when it isn't, they waste time chasing signals. And when someone assumes growth is impossible when it isn't, they may ignore a window that still exists. Clarity matters, and clarity comes from understanding biology rather than guessing based on age alone. Now here's the part most people find surprising. Even when skeletal growth is complete, that does not mean height expression can never change. Posture, spinal mechanics, muscle balance, disc hydration, all of these influence how tall someone measures in daily life. Improving these systems doesn't create new bone length, but it can improve structural alignment and reduce compression. And for some people, that difference is measurable, but that's a different conversation than growth itself. Growth plates determine bone length. Everything else influences how that structure expresses in real life. And understanding that distinction helps people stop chasing unrealistic expectations. So if you take one thing from this video, it's this. Height growth is not determined by motivation, it's determined by structure, and the structure that matters most is the growth plate. If those plates are still open, growth is biologically possible. If they are fused, bone lengthening is no longer part of the equation, which means the most intelligent first step isn't trying random strategies. It's understanding your biological stage. Because once you know that, every decision becomes clear. You stop chasing myths. You stop comparing yourself to people in different developmental stages. And you start working with biology instead of against it. If you found this video helpful, take a second to like the video and subscribe to the channel. It helps more people find this information, and it tells YouTube this is the kind of content worth showing to others. And I'm curious about something. What height or growth topics would you like to see explained next? Let me know in the comments. Because there are a lot of myths in this space, and we're going to keep breaking them down one by one.